Gears 5's campaign has 5 levels difficulty and mutators you can enable to change some interactions, but what happens if we set the game to Inconceivable and switch on all mutators? Can you beat Gears 5's campaign IAMO? Gears 5 Inconceivable with all mutators on, or IAMO for short, is a challenge taking heavy inspiration from Halo's legendary with all skulls on, also Lasso for short. The idea of self-made challenge runs in other games was something that spurred me to do this as well. When the mutators were added into the campaign, we were given 16 different mutators to evolve our Gears 5 campaign experience, with several mutators having multiple options. The rules for this run were as follows. But first, this video took a really long time to put together, so subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below if you would like to see me attempt more of these challenge runs. Back to the rules. First, I had to put on every single mutator, unless it made the game easier in some way. If a mutator had more than one option, I had to pick the option that ups the difficulty the most, and here's what I ended up with. We must set the game's difficulty to Inconceivable, and this can never change. Even though the following aren't within the mutators category, I also activated the following options. Once we beat the Kraken in the final act, the challenge is complete. Now that we have the rules for this run through, let's jump straight into this. Leave a comment below on how many deaths you think I ended the run with. I will be impressed if anyone guesses correctly. Gears 5 starts out with us taking a family trip to Adam Phoenix's grave in search of his weapon of mass destruction. We cut to Kate and her large ego telling Drax about her problems, while 2 Swarm characters impersonate JD and Del. Once we have control of our protagonist, we make our way through Azura until we meet our first Swarm brethren, cuddling the first one we see. We finish off the rest of the Swarm and make our way into a hole to chainsaw some shielded grenadiers. These enemies aren't going to be a problem at all throughout this run. We get to our first classic Gears of War choice where we choose which path. Oh wait, never mind, I guess I'm going right. Immersion is broken, 2 out of 5 stars, don't bother. Jumping down into a sewer, I was going to make a joke here about drowning, you know what, never mind. Carrying on through the water park, enjoying the slide and squeezing through another hole in the wall, we meet back up with Kate and Drax. They provide overwatch and help Del clear out most of the swarm, since my imposter character is incapable of regenerating health. We move on to the carrier fight where we patiently await backup. This time we choose 2 DR1s. Once the backup destroys the carrier, because they play on beginner difficulty, the scrubs, we then move on. Our backup offends the old inferior cog technology. And we come to our first challenging part of this run. Scions also get a front-facing shield, and it's quite difficult to instantly kill these guys. Diving around the arena like a madman, we eventually take down this formidable opponent and die to a couple of drones. I can't wait to fight more Scions throughout this challenge. We raid Prescott safe, find the data, and then go back up Kate and Drax once more. Putting on our big boy pants, we stand up to Marcus when we disobey his order to retreat and successfully launch the rocket. Marcus scowls at us, Dave gets roasted for being a robot.
Who gives a shit? He's a robot!
And we make our way to Exposition, the chapter. Back in New Ephyra, we argue with Kate.
That was a shitty thing to say.
Meet Jack, but not Jill. Beat up an amputated Gear.
Here's the thing, Foss.
Get shouted at by Jin.
Baird superseded me.
And listen to Carmine Radio. Only the smoothest backup requests. We then move on to chapter 3, and well, screw this chapter completely. On the Raven to Settlement 2, Cole lets the nightmares in.
Oh, shit!
We crash land and then get swarmed by children. Fars and Swarm Del rescue us and we make our way through Settlement 2 until a COG recruit almost puts us down.
Shit, sorry, Lieutenant.
We meet up with Lizzie and fight a whole bunch of Swarm. The Scion here is slightly easier to deal with, but we also have our first Pouncers who only care about attacking you, the player. Beating this group of enemies, we make our way through a courtyard, finding out that Fars really likes friendly fire.
Oi, Del. You're gonna be okay.
Why wasn't he introduced as a character in Gears Judgment instead? Now we have to choose to go left or right. I go right and pick up the next Jack component, which I have saved up every single one so far for when we get Jack's next ability. Going back to the left, we stumble on some juvies kidnapping a civilian, and we stand there and do nothing. We kill a few poppers and juvies and finally get to the town centre to back up Carmine. This is where this chapter sucks. There are a lot of grenadiers with shields and lots of drones, and I have to do the entire fight without regenerating health. Dying here again, and again, and again, and again, for about 5 hours. I eventually got lucky enough with some underhanded tactics to finally beat this section.
Alright, Dax is down.
Getting ambushed by some flocks, everyone runs hysterically in their own directions into chapter 4. We instantly decided to use our mind control over the swarm to bring down a friendly raven.
Here, it's not safe!
And this is where we get access to the stim ability, which is the biggest lifesaver since it gives a temporary shield, but also instantly refills your health, even with all the mutators on. We do a fire dance, then another one, and a third one, to fight our first few drones and snipers. We quickly take these enemies out and move forward, saying hello to the darkness, and finally face our first rejects. I'm not sure how much time has passed in the Gears of War story since the swarm became a thing, but they have only just figured out that they can take over DBs. Okay. I really hope the Coalition does a lot more with these DB swarm hybrid enemies for Gears 6. They could make some truly horrifying and grotesque enemies. We chainsaw our way through these, trying to save as much ammo as possible, and when we find the hall filled with these things, we execute almost every single one to once again save that precious Lancer ammo. Going through another loading screen, we crash a party, only to find a bunch of rejects beat us to the punch. Aim for the legs on these enemies and they will go down and self-destruct most of the time, making this room fairly easy to deal with. Heading into the next room, we have to deal with a flock, which isn't the easiest considering the weapons we have. But we managed to take it down and make our way outside to back up some random cog soldiers. The AI teammates don't last long here and we have to take down the Scion on our own. Another flock turns up and we have more drones to deal with. Lucky for us, Kate and Drax appear out of nowhere and we move into the theatre. Drax tells the group that Jace can defend himself. Must be nice to fill in for exposition for characters we haven't seen for almost 3 games. Continuing through the theatre, our hero's premiere curtain call absolutely killed the crowd. What, too soon? The stump here wasn't too difficult to take down, but did drain most of my ammo. We don't need much more since we are at the end of Act 1. Oh, wait.
Clever girl.
Cole and Fars lead a swarm act straight towards us, and getting past this Jurassic enemy was no easy task. Moving around the arena, picking up any weapon I could find, and spamming the stim ability to recover any lost health while trying not to get blown apart by rockets. We eventually take the swarm down, but it's at this point we make one too many jokes about how much we like team killing, and that ends chapter 1. But not before we team kill another Carmine. Jeez, this family's gene pool could fit in a foot spa by this point. Chapter 2 and we arrive in the snowy north. Nothing much really happens here. We walk slowly through the town until we meet up with Oscar, who it turns out is running the village, and has had a really hard time understanding how to set up a rotisserie.
He's supposed to keep him away.
Swarm attack the village, so we fight our way back to the entrance, scavenging any and all weapons we can, with the half ammo pickups being particularly painful at this point. Arriving at the gate, Del exits stage left, and Kate learns she has the ability to mind control nearby swarm, killing Oscar while doing so. Pretty much all the new characters introduced in Gears of War 4 have been killed off by this point, so I'm going to guess they aren't popular. Marcus saves Kate off screen, proving he's still the MVP of Gears, and we get another exposition section. Oscar's dead, Father's a dick,
Maybe get these people out of here. Hey.
and JD got roasted. I'm starting to see a pattern. Marcus then tells Kate to go and look for New Hope. Here we are introduced to the open world aspect, given a sled to get around the open world section of the game. I decided to go through all areas to get as many Jack components as possible and complete all the side missions to try and make the later game easier on myself. We finally make our way to the New Hope facility, where a stomp was being a huge blockade, taking me out multiple times. Once I finally kill it, I decide to carry its weapon away with me, like some sort of hunting trophy. We squeeze through some slim passages and find out that Drax is getting senile, before being hit in the head ourselves by Mr. Big Head and Stick. Once he is finally taken down, shock traps are used to save on ammo and tase a bunch of juvies before moving deeper into New Hope and stealing the batteries from a bunch of rejects. Walking through New Hope, we can see why it got a reputation as the #1 research facility before meeting the wacky founder, Niles Sampson. Well, the computerized version.
Are you listening?
Jack is told to plug into Niles' machine and gets a nasty virus, so make sure you always use protection, people. Cutscene, Kate and Del get attacked by Phlox and have to escape the facility before the asphyxiation becomes too much. Are we sure New Hope wasn't the home of some weird sex cult? Anyway, we slide out of New Hope, get back on the skiff, and get stopped by another gate, while we fight a scion that likes to keep stopping my bullets. These mutators aren't necessarily challenging on their own, but pair them all up and you deal with stupid situations like this. Moving into the next open area, I do more side missions before moving on with the main story. Our next blockade is once again a stomp over a frozen lake covered in rejects. We shoot the ice to drop these toasters in the bath and slowly whittle down the stump once again with whatever we have to hand. Once defeated, we run into Mr. Big Head and Stick once more. Breaking into an old comm tower where we try and pinpoint the location of a weirder and shadier hideout for Niles' sex cult. We semi-achieve this and learn how to become invisible, the next ability that is going to be really helpful with this playthrough. With our new ability equipped, we skiff our way over to the other communication tower before being attacked by the new and improved Razor Hail, bigger and better. There are a couple of fights up the mountain with more than just the elements. One of the fights involves a carrier, which would ordinarily be a challenge, until it decides to take part in the Seren equivalent of winter sports. We play our own game of Dodge the Boulder before finally breaking and entering into the second communication tower. Kate has another vision and we get the full location of Niles' main sex dungeon. Sliding back towards the skiff once again to make our way to the end of this chapter before finding out that we have to get through a huge amount of ice. This is a very exclusive dungeon. To get in, we have to head over to a mine and steal some equipment. We head over a frozen lake, taking on a bunch of swarm and then having to defend the same area. And just like the hard section in the first act, screw this part of the game. We place down several shock traps, dunking as many swarm into the cold water and avoid everything being thrown at me. I finally make it through this area after another couple of hours of consistent deaths. Doesn't this make you want to try this challenge yourself? If you do, then good luck. This section is terrible. After that immense fight, we make our way to the top of the lift, finally get a good place to resupply before heading into the mine, which is completely barren except for a bunch of swarm pods. Let's just head in, get what we need, and this is a trap, isn't it? We have to take on a snatcher, which is really difficult to kill on its own, but it gets backed up by several waves of juvies and poppers, but this is still easier than the last section. Once defeated, Jack grabs the phosphorus tank and we are ambushed again. Who could have saw that coming? Fighting our way out of the mine through everything we didn't have to kill on the way in was made harder because we couldn't use Jack's abilities in this section, meaning I don't regenerate health once again, and Jack can also die in this section, which happened on a few occasions. After slowly and carefully fighting our way out of the mine, we have to take on a Multigiant and some Juvies, which I totally didn't cheese. Back to the exclusive sex club with our new pass, where Swarmdell is completely overconfident in his calculations.
Great. Safety first.
We land at the door to Niles' exclusive club, and both characters thrust their hand into Tetanus the machine. Seems sanitary. Robo Niles meets with our heroes and guides us through more exposition. Lab. Kate is given the chance to sever her link with the Swarm by having a Jedi mind battle with the Matriarch and loses. Wait, wins. Actually, I have no idea. This is just a weird sequence that seems to work. And then Niles runs away. Wheels away. Our heroes give chase and lose all of their weapons. Then we run into the human corpse of Niles and see that the Matriarch has escaped its container. Ooh, foreshadowing. Making our way into the next room, we fight some Locust before moving... Wait, Locust. I thought we were supposed to be fighting the new version, the Swarm. Maybe we'll get some weird Swarm, Locust, DB hybrids in the next Gears games. Who knows? We turn off the freezing machines, smash some more frozen Locust before having to fight even more sires that Niles throws at us. The Matriarch finds us by smashing through a wall, then fails to smash through a door to reach us. Seems about right. We continue making our way out, taking on wave after wave of sires. Finally catch up to Robo Niles. We are about to get some answers and damn it, guess we're fighting the Matriarch now. To beat this, we run around the arena, keeping our distance and using the flash ability to freeze it in place whenever we can't drop it in the ice. When the Matriarch drops to a certain level of health, Raina begins to mock our hero by doing that thing where parents use your full name when you've done something wrong. One final hit with a Nasher puts the Matriarch down. We climb out of the icy hole. Drax and Baird come to pick us up, and we get a little bit more exposition before heading out to the desert, which is the start of Act 3. Landing in the third act and the deserts of Vazgar, we are introduced to Baird's contact and are given even more exposition before being mocked once more.
You're too cowardly or stupid.
Baird decides to keep changing the size of his head throughout the start of this act, really confusing me, and we get another upgrade for Jack. Making our way to the skiff, and we are given this amazing scene where the big head mutator does a lot to carry it.
Maybe you should try listening for once.
Kate.
And then we board the skiff and start exploring the desert, before making our way over to the rocket hangar. We stealthily take out as many drones as possible before sniping the rest of them, and pushing through heavy turret fire once our cloak ability comes off cooldown. It's at this point in the story that elite units start showing up even more, and enemies with a claw rifle are not fun to deal with. We watch Fars fail miserably to take out a single enemy, and finally head into the dark hangar, making this one of the shortest chapters in the entire game. The group makes their way towards the main control room and they learn that someone managed to hide a rocket, you know, something small and easy to conceal, before Jack plugs into another dirty machine and possibly gets another virus. I've said it before, but use protection even if you are a robot. Fars gets to drive a platformy thing, his words, not mine, before getting to our first bunch of enemies in a while. Enemies in a desert with a big frozen canister next to them, yet I won't make such an easy joke, so we quickly and move through to the next open room and major fight. Cloak is one of the most effective tools at getting through these sections where there are a lot of enemies, saving precious ammo for later fights. In the very next room, Paddock also begins to tell us how much he enjoys friendly fire, must be a Vazgari trait, and tells us we have no chance of beating the Swarm. I thought he was supposed to be on our side. Jack is commanded to open a door, so we wait patiently. This is another ambush, isn't it? Certain parts of this game, with all possible mutators switched on, are painful to play. This is another section that infuriated me. We use as many tricks as we can, planting shock traps, grenades, using the turret to save ammo, but this is yet another section that requires a lot of luck and attempts to get through. The shielded enemies here are difficult to deal with, and the game throws in another big head and stick. Well, screw you game. Through sheer luck and some excellent shooting on my part, not to blow my own trumpet or anything, but all the smaller enemies were taken down with the traps set, and I managed to stay on the turret for the entire fight. One quick scope later and the warden attempts to starfish on the ceiling. Jack opens the door for us, we open another one 10 meters further along, and jump onto another platformy thing. Arriving on the first platform and instantly knowing how to assemble a rocket, we take the most geared approach, kicking, then shoving the part into place before being attacked by several pouncers. These enemies can typically kill you in one hit, but we aced this and got through first try. The group of misfits gets back onto the gantry once more and heads to the other side, where we were on good track to beat this side first try as well, until Kobe comes in with the perfect drop shot, taking me out. Several deaths later and my team help out enough, taking out every enemy before I blow the load of my overkill into the Scion, quickly exploding him. 2 flocks then show up and these become grueling to take out with the non-existent ammo problem we are having. When these enemies are taken down, the second satellite is loaded onto the rocket, we get back on the gantry and Fars learns to teleport.
Well, there's a platform up there.
More story exposition now, something about them liking to set themselves on fire, and we get to sand sledding. I nearly shoot Del several times for looking like the enemy, and Fars, well, just because he is Fars, and have another difficult fight in a long, thin corridor. A bunch more deaths here before we eventually make it through by sticking the shielded Scion with a frag grenade and scrounging up what ammo we could find. Fortunately, this is one of the last fights as we simply walk through exposition once more, gathering up what components we can and doing some sand sledding into more enemies, turning invisible and then putting them to sleep. A carrier is the final enemy in the way and we whittle the chunky boy down before Fars opens his mouth again. Paddock tells us that our next objective is across the desert, so we head back out to our skiff, finishing off this particular chapter. We then make our way across the desert, catch some air and get onto the next part of the map. I did spend some time finishing off the side objectives, and the most notable part was when I got to use a silverback with these mutators. Big head mode has your character's head clipping through the mighty weapon and makes it look ridiculous. Shame you can't bring this with you. A wind flare starts up in the desert, remember how prevalent these things were in Gears of War 4, and we sail through this one first time. First time. Okay, I'm terrible with the skiff, alright. I'm sure you beat this part first time as well, did you? Ooh, look at you, Mr. Fancy Driver in your And we arrive at our next objective, the table turn, and attempt to recreate the famous coal train rescuing Delta Squad scene from Gears of War 2. Virtually identical. Mr. Big Head and Stick stops by again and he almost takes us out by slamming his stick off the ground. We finish him off and then turn the rocket around and finish up in this area. We quickly jump back on the skiff once more. JD tells us he has abandonment issues and we made it through the wind flare first time. No, really, I nailed it on the way back, like an absolute gamer. We race into the control area, stealth scum some more enemies and cause some property damage. And this is another ambush. I'm loving these. Fortunately, just a lot of weak enemies here, lots of juvies and immagos, super easy to take out and we quickly move on, listening to even more exposition about needing targeting beacons. I get this thing was supposed to be a super weapon, but why would you keep all the parts so far away from each other? Oh yeah, video game logic, got it. Arriving at the Cosmodrome facility and Paddock tells us that the COG aren't the nice guys they make themselves out to be. Oh really? You only just noticed? Nothing much really happens for a while, just heading through, grabbing ammo and components until we run into a Mulcher Scion that has the high ground. We take out all the enemies, setting the Scion on fire and electrocuting him when JD tells us about his weird kinks.
Okay, swarm assholes and be wiped clean. Aware of how that sounds.
Whatever floats your boat. We make our way through reject after reject until we get to the centrifuge room, where we are supposed to pick up some Hammer of Dawn targeting beacons and get ambushed by even more enemies. Surprisingly, I made it through this section unscathed, taking out enemy after enemy, with the AI teammates doing some good work for once. As Scion joins the fight and we abuse Jack's abilities to stun it and take everything else out, before handing him a lovely frag grenade as a leaving gift. A Snatcher jumps into the room and the mobile bowling ball conveniently detaches, crushing the Snatcher against the wall. We retrieve the targeting beacons and the roided out characters struggle to carry these out the facility. A wind flare begins to rip through the Cosmodrome and the team gets pinned down by a turret while thunder strikes grow temporary cover. A really nice touch. Once defeated, we then jump on the turret while I wait for Jack to do Jack things and take out as many enemies as possible before their shields kick in. I barely cleared this section first time, getting by just by the skin of my teeth and continuing through more exposition. We take the targeting beacons back to the airfield and Baird has a shiny new upgrade for Jack, which we hear all about for about 3 seconds before being thrown into another fight.
It's actually very interesting. First, it creates an ionized vector.
Another section I died several times at by trying to force myself to use Jack's new barrier ability, but I eventually push the enemies back onto the airfield and they show their appreciation for Baird by hurling all their bullets towards him. My number one pro tip for dealing with shielded Scions on this run is to rush them while Jack stims you, and you can tag them with a grenade.
60% of the time, it works every time.
The group races on the skiff to save some nomads, and Baird has had enough of the desert, so heads back to New Ephyra while we head to the rocket hangar. Once inside, a Snatcher creeps in and messes with the rocket assembly, because nothing can ever be simple in a game. A second Snatcher shows up and we have to take down both before moving on, along with a bunch of Scions. This is another difficult section, but definitely not the worst. I make it through and move the squad onto the rocket, where Fars also shows his appreciation for the coal train by tackling a Snatcher off the back of the train, sacrificing himself in the process. Ah, wait, no, he survives. The rocket makes it to the launch area, some foreshadowing is shown, and Jack gets a little impatient, deciding to trigger the launch sequence straight away. Now the group has to race down the rocket platform, fighting several tentacles on the way down. Not a sentence I ever thought I would say. The owner of said tentacles knocks us down to the desert floor, where we have to repeatedly destroy its tongues while underneath the rocket. Eventually, the rocket begins to fire. Fars almost gets crushed, and the giant creature gets roasted, again noticing this pattern. Fars comes to the rescue and flies the group back to New Ephyra and into the next act. Once back in New Ephyra, we learn that Paddock can't really fly a Raven and also slings more insults our way. Everyone is summoned to Baird's workshop, and here we get the best line in the entire game.
It's Foz, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Shut the fuck up, Foz.
Jin joins the group, attempts to arrest Kate, and everyone shoulder charges up one of the Onyx Guard that Jin brought with her. The Onyx Guard were meant to be some sort of elite unit, and the games have always loved to show us how useless they really are. Even Jack gets in on this. Clayton hands us back a targeting beacon, telling us to take it to the East Barricade Academy so we can use the Hammer of Dawn. Finally. Gears 5 focused too heavily on this weapon, and it's definitely going to pay off, right? Clayton takes out some carriers, and Cole turns up in one of the large construction mechs. The guy truly is larger than life. The group moves further towards their designated area, running into a Swarmac and plenty of swarm drones, before Mr. Big Head and Stick turns up once more. Taking the warden down and clearing out the building, the group finally gets access to the Hammer of Dawn and uses this to slowly take out the Swarmac. Now I am starting to feel powerful. Paddock survives another helicopter crash and we are told to head to his location to provide backup. Fighting through several rejects, drones and a stump, we finally end up at the Tomb of the Unknown, which, if you didn't know, is where Min is killed in the first game, and we are introduced to Baird. Paddock, being the boss he is, has been fighting a lot of swarm here alone, so we end up having to take down a large number of enemies, abusing our stim as often as we can to stay alive. Several swarm nests show up with a lot of Imago enemies, but once these are dealt with, we finally meet up with the angry Graznian. This is another difficult area that has a lot of enemies coming from different directions, so of course we nail this bit first time, Okay, it's not easy with the number of enemies, but using Jack's powers, we ended up scraping through this section, even taking out the final Mr. Big Head and Stick, and Scions that turn up later in the fight. Kate then grabs the beacon and plants this outside behind the tomb, and we get access to the Hammer of Dawn once more, having to fend off a lot of enemies here, mostly Scions, Pouncers and Snatchers. The biggest enemy here is me. Pro tip, don't use the Hammer of Dawn close to where you want to stand, as this will kill you. After taking out the last enemy, the tentacle monster from Act 3 returns, takes out the beacon, and we get to see the arrival of Queen Reyna. Del and JD are flung to the side and suddenly forget they have access to firearms, rushing Reyna with knives, and we are forced to make a very unimportant choice. Honestly, can I choose to save none of them? That knife choice was stupid and neither of them deserve saving. Eventually I make what I believe to be the more canonical choice and chose to save JD, since this character has definitely shown a lot more growth over the 2 games compared to Del. A building comes crashing down and pushes us into the final chapter of this run. Chapter 2 starts out with JD turning into a drone, Cole saving us. We move forward, grabbing whatever weapons and ammo we can find. The duo catches up with Drax, taking out groups of Swarm, before Fars shows up and brags about staying alive longer than Del.
Del, look who's saving who. Again.
The group jumps into a Minotaur and we have an on-rail section that is extremely challenging, having to take out... Nah, I'm joking. You just have to stay ducked down and take out a small number of Juvies before being thrown out. A large number of Swarm, well, swarms us. Oh, that's why they call them a Swarm. Of course it is. This is another tough section due to the lack of ammo and enemies having the high ground, but we eventually get lucky, spamming our camouflage and stim abilities to make it through. A carry and flock finish this section off, and finally hearing it die signals the end of one of the hardest fights left in Gears 5. Jumping back into the Minotaur for an on-rails section, just before we get kicked out because of a Swarmack, which drops much faster than I anticipated. This very serious scene is interrupted by Cole jumping on the back of a Swarmack for a piggyback ride before we are told to retreat even closer to New Ephyra. With our backs against the wall, the group holds out against encroaching Swarm until Baird carpet bombs the area, signalling the Kraken to come up to the surface and kicking off the final boss fight of this run. This boss fight consists of shooting the several tongues when its mouth is open wide while we wait for the railgun to recharge.
As soon as it recharges!
Shooting the huge weapon only damages the Kraken, and this section gets filled with innuendos, while the group has to shoot more tongues, repeating the process. After a second shot from the railgun, Jack gets the robotic equivalent of massive balls, and sacrifices itself by taking over the Hammer of Dawn, using itself as a targeting beacon inside the Kraken. And that is the end of the run. So, can you beat Gears 5 on Inconceivable difficulty with all mutators on? Yes, you can, though it is definitely a challenge. As the ending of the game plays in the background, I want to highlight how incredible it looks when Fars realise his head has absorbed his glasses, only for them to suddenly appear where they need to be. Now's the time for some stats. This run took a decent amount of time to complete, just over 25 hours in total. In that time, I managed to accumulate a total of 421 deaths throughout this run. I told you all, this is not an easy challenge. I will break these totals down for each individual act and place it on screen for you as well. This challenge run was very difficult, and I feel like this would challenge even the best Gears players. This challenge run took a lot of time to complete and much longer to put the video together, so if you could subscribe to the channel, that would be absolutely amazing. I do have some other challenge runs lined up for Gears that I am currently working on, but if you have any ideas of your own, then please leave them in a comment below and tell me what you thought of this video. I really liked doing this challenge run, and after a couple more of these, I will start to attempt these live on Twitch, so if you could head over there and follow me on that platform as well, that would be awesome. I do want to thank you guys for all the support you have shown this channel, watching these videos when they are released, and I am hoping to add these kinds of videos to my channel. That's it for this video. As always, take it easy Gears, and I will catch you in the next one.